When you think about businesses like Allbirds or Skims that are selling through the roof, sure, you think about a great product, a cool brand, and brilliant marketing. But what's often overlooked is the business behind the business that makes it all possible. For millions of businesses, that's Shopify. Nobody does selling better than Shopify, the home of the #1 checkout on the planet. With Shop Pay, you can boost conversions by up to 50%, meaning fewer abandoned carts and way more sales. Whether your customers are scrolling online, strolling through your store, or browsing social media, Shopify ensures you're ready to sell wherever they are. It's no secret, businesses that want to grow, grow with Shopify. Upgrade your business and get the same checkout Allbirds uses. Sign up for your $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/DAX, all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/DAX to upgrade your selling today. Shopify.com/DAX.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back. Welcome back. Welcome back. This is Joe, the Wellness Curator, and this is the Obsidian Mindset podcast. I'm so excited to have you here today. And we have a special guest who will be a recurring special guest. Very, very special. Evan, say what's up.
Hey, everyone. Hello, hello.
So what Evan is bringing to the table for Obsidian is we will be bringing this new segment called The Library is Open. So before we start, I'm just going to say we're going to keep this title until there's like a cease and desist. I feel like someone owns the rights to this. But until then, we're just going to stick with it because we're talking about reading and I don't want to call it Obsidian Reads. And, you know, we're going to let's jazz it up. Let's add a little zhuzh. Right? No? Am I wrong? Does that feel right?
You're right. You're spot on.
Thank you. That's all that. See, this is what I'm talking about. So basically, before I get too excited about the title, the purpose of this segment, which will be coming once a month, we're going to be doing this segment to discuss different books, articles, podcasts, anything literary to the relating to wellness. Just to get a different perspective of wellness from that point of view. So, you know, I'm an avid reader. Evan's an avid reader. I know a lot of you guys are also avid readers. And we want to talk about wellness through the space of, once again, similar to the podcast, underserved communities that usually are not impacted or those that are not thought of when we think of wellness. We want to shed some light, whether that's data and research, because a few of us are data and research nerds. Or even if it's stories dealing with wellness in someone's perspective. So there's a lot we could talk about, a lot we can do, and we're going to all do it together. Did I miss anything?
Well, I think that's perfect. Spot on.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. So to jump off, it's not Little Kim. To start off, wow. Okay. So that's kind of... she might want to join the book club. All right, so the first episode, the first book is going to be about, we're going to be reviewing Can't Hurt Me, Master Your Mind, and Defy the Odds by David Goggins. Okay, we got a book. Oh, you got the blur. Yeah, oh, man, I don't have my copy either. All right.
You all can Amazon it. It's on
or buy it from your local bookstore.
Even better.
There we go, independent bookstore. But we'll put it in show notes. He was pulling it up to show the camera for those that don't know, because we have video now. Okay, so basically that's the book. We've read it. Evan's read it twice. I read it once a while ago. But we're going to speak about it now and really go through what the book's about, who he is, and some of the challenges that he presents, and why some of those challenges are worded. How do I say? Are they problematic?
Creatively.
They're very animated.
Animated, yes, animated and direct.
We'll get into that because you know that's a bit of a problem too. But anyway, so Evan, please start off with who is David Goggins?
Perfect. So who is David Goggins? So if anyone hasn't heard of him, he's honestly known as like an American badass. Why? Because he is the only member who has completed. He's the only person right now in America who's completed both U.S. Armed Forces, 3 U.S. Armed Forces trainings, that being the SEAL training, the U.S. Army Ranger School, as well as the Air Force Tactical Air Controller training. Mind you, these are intensive trainings, especially the SEAL training, which is known as Hell Week, which is 2 weeks of hell. Yeah, I mean that's exactly it. But he will get into why he decided to do these things and what he really received from it. In addition to his military accolades, he's also a world-renowned triathlon or ultra triathlon completer, as well as an ultra marathoner. Ultra being anything past really 26 miles. So these are like intensive runs, swims, bikes that really, are demanding for the human body. So he's also known for that. And then lastly, being a public speaker, talking about really his experiences both in the military, growing up in a rough neighborhood with a rough family, and just overcoming all of his fears and becoming who we know him as today.
Yes. So for those that need a little context of what an ultra marathon is, it literally can be 50 miles, 50, 100 miles of running in one time. So let's just take a second to think about that's a long distance.
That's a lot of running. Okay. And literally, some of these runs take a whole day.
Right. 24 hours.
If you go to his website, he has all of his medals and times and places he's placed in these runs. Okay. And it goes a lot into his mindset around fitness and why he really pushes his body to these extremes, which is, really remarkable when you think about it. Like the human body can do so much more than we think. And that's kind of in what he also coined as the 40%, the 40% rule. So the 40% rule is essentially saying, think about when you are working out, doing something intensive. Maybe, this is your first 5K 5K event. And you're at that like 2.5 mile and you're like, I can't do it anymore. And you stop and you begin walking. When you begin walking, that's actually you just reaching your 40%. There is 60% essentially left of you to continue going that we as humans don't always break into. And that's what he wants to do. I can't say he hasn't mentioned that he's unlocked like 100%, but he always has that desire to do more, become more, because it's my mind that's preventing me from keep going. And he uses that in pretty much all aspects of his life.
Yeah, it sounds like basically there's always a little bit more juice in your tank, or that's the wrong metaphor. There's always a little bit more gas in your tank, whether you know it or not. It's about training yourself to learn to unlock that little bit of gas, that reserve, I guess.
Correct.
Although it seems out of reach and unthinkable in the moment if you haven't trained yourself to think about that, right? Like if you're giving what you think is 100%, if I say give me 110, you're like, I'm done, right? Like no,
Okay.
there's no number above 100%. But if you tell me actually 100% is 40 and you have a whole bunch left, you're like, okay, I guess. But you kind of have to get used to that.
And I think for David Goggins, much of his fuel essentially comes from pretty much a lot of trauma that he has accumulated really throughout his life. So he wrote this book when he was about 43. So each chapter, there are about 10, 11 chapters. Each one is a story, and he really kind of reflects on what he learned from and how he felt in that moment, but also how he got to like a life lesson that he also shares in his book. But he had a really rough childhood, a very abusive father, and he also a very abusive both mentally and physically to his brother and his mother as well. He was very much one of those fathers who, was like, suck it up. We will not take you to the doctor. You need to become stronger. If you're bleeding, if something's broken, very negligent to say the least. But eventually his mother was able to remove him, his brother, and herself from that relationship, and they moved really throughout Indiana as a young boy. But as David Goggins began to grow up into his adolescence, he had other challenges, especially racism, being in a school as the only Black guy, and just the stressors also of his size. He was a bigger teenage boy than most. And, we often know sometimes, tall boys always have to do some type of athletic event or something. So again, think of just 13, 15-year-old dealing with a lot and not knowing really how to release it. However, he was inspired by his grandfather, who was a cook in the Air Force, and just seeing the demeanor of his father inspired Goggins to say, you know what, I think the military is for me. So at the time he made that decision, he also looked back on his life. He was like, how the hell am I going to get into the military? Because he flunked out. He was flunking out of
I do
school. He
remember
stopped
that.
going. He just wasn't even physically fit. He wasn't like
Right.
eating right. He wasn't in the aptitude to enter the military, the service at all. So that's kind of what started what he mentions as the callous mindset. It's really taking that moment to shut out everything and just say, I'm getting shit done. I am getting into the military. And essentially he did it. He did get himself into the military, and that's his first venture was the Hell Week, the SEAL training. However, life always throws its curveballs, right? So he actually he did not finish his first Hell Week because of medical reasons. And as you read the book, you'll learn like this guy had damn near double pneumonia, so pneumonia in both of his lungs.
I
But
didn't
again,
even
he
know that was
wanted to push
possible.
himself, right? He wanted to push himself so much. He was like, I want to be. He had the callous mindset. I want to get into these special operation task forces within the military. So yeah. So again, he talks about that, how he again how he kind of went into a depressive state, gained a lot of weight, and then again had to develop another callous mindset to say, you know what, I am getting back in here. I'm going to finish this Hell Week. He lost about 105 pounds in what he says is 3 weeks, like very quickly. Like he worked his ass off to get back in there, get through the Hell Weeks, and just really kind of start this life and this journey of, it worked in that moment. He was like, I'm going to keep doing this. It worked for him. So that's what led him to do the ultra triathlons, the ultra marathons, as well as he's a Guinness World Record breaker of the
Yes.
most pull-ups. I think like 4,038 pull-ups.
Wild. I'm
Yo,
here struggling for 15 reps.
okay, I'm struggling with like three. Uh, Yeah, but again, it's that callous mindset of how he developed. I want to be the best. I need to be the best. I have no other choice than to be the best of what I do. And if you aren't afraid of gruesome pictures, I would dare you to check out the photos of his hands after 4,038 or 30
Oh,
push-ups. Yeah. I mean pull-ups.
ugh. That's both a I for I don't know how long it would take me to count to that number, let alone do that many push-ups. I mean, you said pull-ups or push-ups? You said
Pull-ups.
pull-ups. Even worse, even worse. But major feat. So that's a good synopsis of the book. But I do remember there were challenges at the end of each chapter. As you said, each chapter was their own story. There was about 10 stories and 10 challenges. So do you want to present kind of the overview of what the challenges were? And then we can kind of go through some of our favorites or some of the ones that we resonated with.
Yes. So at the end of each chapter, he provides a challenge to his readers that say, hey, look, this is how you can be successful or the badass in whatever aspect of life that you want. So I'll go through these quickly. First, list out everything that is preventing your growth and success. 2, write out all of your insecurities and dreams on post-it notes and place them in a place where you can see them every day, such as a mirror. 3, do an uncomfortable thing every day. 4, work harder on whatever you're working on now. 5, visualize your success. 6, create a cookie jar of obstacles you've overcome. 7, do more. You can handle it. 8, assess and readjust your schedule. Prioritize your goals. 9, remain in constant pursuit of your achievements. And 10, use the lessons from previous failures to propel you forward. So those were the 10. I pretty much paraphrase them, but that's the gist of like the challenges he gives to his readers.
Yeah, I was going to say you did a masterful job of paraphrasing it to make it accessible and anyone can read it, because I will say that his tone is very what did I call it? His tone is very direct and animated
And problematic.
and very problematic some of the time. Like you gotta imagine the stereotypical like Army, Navy, person of this and doing drills, and he calls you out of your name a few times in some of these these challenges from what I remember.
Yeah, this book isn't for the sensitive parted. It is very in your face. You're like, oh, okay, let me get my shit together. It is very, it's very direct.
Mhm.
And for that reason, there are a lot of nuggets in it, but some people may feel like it is an abrasive way to tackle goals, because what I can say is these are very structured and direct. Like these are very, it's very militant, to say the
Mm-hmm.
least. Like,
Right.
this approach may not be for someone who is new to their wellness journey, or
Mm-hmm.
you have to digest it how you can. They are useful, but it can be challenging for someone who may we everyone's story is different, so it can be applied to different aspects, but how would just depend on you. So I would say, like, read this with a filter and get what you need out of it.
Yeah, and that's why I commend you for the way you paraphrase it, because it makes it easier to understand the way you paraphrased it. So we'll go through that way. I don't know if you have the exact quotes, because I kind of want to show some of the ones that we wanted to talk about what he exactly said, so we can kind of talk about the language as well.
Okay.
Um, but let's start with, so what we did for those at home is we picked a few that we either still use, that we resonate with, or we just thought there were gems that we could take out and show everyone, and we really want to highlight them. So for me, I know we talked about challenge number one. So I don't know if you want to read what it actually says really
For
quickly.
challenge one,
Yeah,
let's see.
as just an example. We don't have to go through each one and read them all, but and actually, challenge one might be a very tamed one, because I think it was just about
It's not.
Trump.
I'll read the first paragraph
I
though.
tried to give the benefit of the doubt. Oh man.
Good try though. I'll read the yeah. Here it is. My bad cards arrive early and stuck around a while, but everyone gets challenged in life at some point. What is your bad hand? What kind of bullshit are you dealing with? Are you getting beaten, abused, bullied? Do you ever feel insecure? Maybe your limiting factor is that you are growing up so supported and comfortable you never push yourself. So yeah, that's how he starts off, and then he goes into break out your journal,
Damn.
even if you don't have one. Do it on your laptop, but write things into minute detail. Don't be bland. I showed you every piece of my dirty laundry. If you were hurt or you are still in harm's way, tell the truth of your story. Give pain shape. Absorb its power, because you are about to flip that shit.
So it's like break you. It's one of those like break you down and then build you up. Like break you down and then like let me. Now that you're at your down, let me help you and give you encouraging words. Before we get into the challenges,
Mhm.
I just want to very similar to different ways of personal training. So
Mhm.
in my experience, you know, very problematic show, but I loved it at the time. The Biggest Loser. I don't know if you ever watched.
Yeah, I remember that.
So this his personality reminds me of like Jillian. Was it Jillian Michaels? Was the woman the one that was just always yelling at
That
people?
sounds right. That's her name today.
And that style works for some people, I guess. But one, it is harmful. It can be harmful, even if it's not at the moment. Later on, it could be harmful. And two, it just has a way of rubbing people the wrong way if that's not the style that you want. So I think it works and it doesn't. And I think you just have to be, as a person, and I'm just speaking as a trainer. As a trainer, you kind of have to know the person you're talking to before you inflict another. Like, you want to help people and you want to heal people, but you also don't want to add more trauma and hurt while you're healing. So that's my only qualm about the book. That's the little piece of shade that I give about the book for this episode. But
Because you are the person breaking yourself down, but you are also the person responsible for building yourself back up.
mm,
And I'm not a mental health professional, but we in the age that we are understanding, just well being, it can be a very thin, like it is like a
mhm,
gray area, a silver lining on like how do I really build myself up, especially
mm,
for a goal that I have struggled with. Let's say it's losing weight. Let's say it's reducing your cholesterol. Whatever it is, it can be challenging, and those type of changes don't happen instantaneously. They happen over time. So you have to be cognizant of like what the goal is and like who you are in that moment. So you did bring up something that kind of talks about. I'm glad you just said that, because what step is it? Step two, actually, the challenge two, which is write all of your insecurities on your post-it notes. I wish I can find, I'm gonna look for it, but essentially, like, he is saying, like, you write out whatever it is and put on a post-it note because that's the truth. For instance, if you're overweight, he mentions like write your fat. Let me see. So here it is. Write all of your insecurities, dreams, goals, and post-its on post-its and tag it in your mirror. If you need more education, remind yourself that you need to start working your ass off because you aren't smart enough. Period, point blank. If you look in the mirror and see someone who is obviously overweight, that means you're fucking fat. Own it. It's okay to be unkind with yourself in those moments because we need thicker skin to improve in life. I see.
See, we get into a whole conversation about the tone of it, of just like, very big on Obsidian. Words matter. Words mean things, and just get over it. That's like that. What?
Again, breaking yourself down to deal with yourself. That's a lot of responsibility.
That is.
But I mean, like, what do you think that comes from? Is it just a survival thing? Because, like, it seems like, well, let me say this. This is, I think, when you think about, when you compare this autobiography to other military autobiographies or American stories, it's very similar where I was at rock bottom and he was at a rock bottom. He was eating like, there's a, like, I would say the climax of the story is when he had to, when he wanted to go back to his second hell week. And he was talking about how, like, he ate like shit, like it was trash, but he had to change all of his ways. But I think that's very popular in, like, that's part of our, culture. And it seems like that's the only way that works, but that's the only way that we talk about. I do believe there are other ways that we as just communities can like still reach those goals. Let's in this context, let's talk about physical well-being goals without it having to be some, professional level athleticism or something. Just be for me, and I can be happy, and I can still crush the goal without having to crush my soul.
Okay, is it? Were you about to quote? Were you?
Oh yeah, go do that. I mean, this is Renaissance Day, but
were you about to
break the soul, not break the soul.
Okay, thank you. I don't want to get any cease and desist letters from Parkwood. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Everybody else got them.
You didn't. All right. No, I think you make a really good point, and it's like you're of two minds because you're like, yes, that's true, but then it gets to like trauma, right? And you're kind of you're continue to traumatize yourself to get to the next level. And is that healthy, right? Just because he succeeds doesn't mean it's healthy, right? And I think one thing I did not, and I read it a while ago, but one thing that kind of rubbed me the wrong way is because it made it seem like this is the surefire way to get this done. This is my way. It works. If you're not doing it, you're messing up. You're doing it wrong. And that always rubbed me the wrong way. And that's why I always like to caveat, you can take your gems from it, but don't read it similar. I don't want to say as the Bible, but don't read it as your source only. Be able to pick out of it if you need to read it for the story wise, but the overall everything from it is just very toxic and it can be re-traumatizing. So I just put that out there before we get into the challenges.
And what you are mentioning is a reoccurring critique of the book. If you go on Amazon or Goodreads, people bring that. There are people who are like, this man is heaven sent. He is everything. This is how I want my son. This is how I want my life to be. I threw away all of the bread and sugars in my house and I changed my life in 90 days. There are those type of people. But then there are another set of people who are like, when I look at his story and I listen to his story, there is trauma. And although it is, again, like you said, the fuel to his callous mindset, how has he worked through that? And I mean, no one really knows with David Goggins, right? But like, people have questioned, like, how is that trauma helping or hindering you? Because another thing that he mentions is in the book is that he feels suffering is needed. And especially in the African American, the Black American culture. Suffering it can be a triggering word. Well, let me just speak for me. I have this idea of suffering, and like it's voluptuous, it's hard, you know? So when he says that suffering is needed, the definition of suffering can be different for different people, but regardless of the varying definition, suffering is still challenging, it's still hard. People suffer for lifetimes. But he feels like that's how he was able to get through these races, for instance, because I mean, you are really torturing. Well, he mentions it as a way of torturing his body, and that can be like you said, a harmful way to look at it. Although we know the human body can do extra, but you know, you don't think of it as torturing. We can probably think of it as my body is supporting me. You know, they're again that vernacular, the way we have to be conscious of how we're treating our minds and bodies in the same way. Let me just say this real quick because I think this would be a perfect way to like interject how Pfizer defines wellness. They say wellness is the act of practicing healthy habits on a daily basis to attain better physical and mental health outcomes. So instead of surviving, you're thriving.
You know, I love you.
That last part, it's the
That
mind.
I'm all about thriving out here.
Okay.
Especially the last 3 years we've been having for 2 years, which felt like full on survival mode.
All right.
That was a good,
Thriving.
Okay, yeah. That's literally what we're going for. And I think that is even the reason Obsidian, that's the reason why I want to focus on wellness versus fitness or physical activity. It's just that thriving piece, not just trying to do what's needed or getting from day to day, which happens, right? We all have it. It all is there. But like, how do we start to shift that where either we stop thinking that's the only way, or how do we start putting in certain mindsets to allow us to be in spaces where thriving seems like the norm, right? Or it seems like something that is attainable. I think a lot of people feel, and I'll even speak for myself. It's when you're in survival mode, thinking about thriving is not top of mind, right? Like how am I going to get through the next thing, which is valid, especially in today's age. But I think there are certain tweaks of mindset and thoughts and processes where you can change how you view things that can easily turn your survival mode or your survival outlook into a thriving.
I agree. I think in order to thrive, you have to have the thriving mindset. You have to feel as though I'm capable of thriving and I'm in an environment to thrive. And I have the resources needed to thrive. If you don't have those things in place, or even if you don't believe that, or you don't know how to be resourceful and obtain those things, or don't know who to go to for such things, it can be challenging. But when you do, it is very much so a mindset. And honestly, Can't Hurt Me it talks about his mindset to achieve these goals. Is it the best mindset it's definitely a individualistic mindset, but is it a mindset for a group of people to use to move forward towards improved cardiovascular care, improve mileage, better groceries in the grocery stores? Is that the mindset we want to use? I think there are other options. I'll say that. I think there are other options because a lot of what I did also learn is that this is more individual compared to a community mindset, where the community mindset is looking at a number of aspects to, like you said, that wellness. It's not just physical activity. Wellness is the umbrella, but this physical activity is one portion, but the occupational needs, the environmental needs, so many other things are going into it. And I think that's what we're striving for here. Like, how can we improve every little thing little by little and create essentially a wellness utopia, compared to like scavenging or being really good at this, giving this all 100%, but then like being depleted in other aspects of our being, our wellness. Having the perfect body means nothing if I don't know how to acknowledge my emotions, or if I'm worrying about my job, or I'm working in a toxic environment. Like, don't weigh out. It don't make sense.
Totally agree. I think the surviving slash thriving mindset. I think that's a good segue into challenge one, which I kind of got into a tangent on, but let's go through the 4 challenges. I think that's a really good example of. You can go ahead and we can discuss. We can go through your paraphrased version a little bit easier.
So I do want to highlight 2 specific ones that I think also will mean a lot. One, number 6, I paraphrased it as creating your cookie jar of obstacles, the obstacles you overcame. So, what is a cookie jar, you ask? Let me tell you. Essentially, you should write out moments in your life where you overcame a challenge or you've achieved something. Some of my cookies in my cookie jar, I just write it in the back of my journal. I wrote like completed my first triathlon. I wrote learning how to swim for the triathlon, okay, which is another story. But being able to like pay off my credit card in X amount of days, those small things, because when you are in a moment where you're just stressed out and you're like, Evan, I don't know where I can get anything from. I go in my cookie jar and I grab a cookie and I'm like, you know what? I did do that shit. I can do this shit now. That's what it is for me. You have a cookie jar?
I sure do. So of all the gems, so this book, I have a love-hate relationship with this book, but that was the one gem that I remembered reading and I still use to this day. I have done, my fair share of long distance races, and you have upwards to 4 hours, or some of these races are longer than 4 hours. So you have plenty of time to think. You also have plenty of time to think of good things, but also, why am I here? Why am I doing this? Maybe I should stop, right? So I have come in and used that cookie jar and thought of either my first marathon, finishing that, and then just the emotion around that. I told the story of, like, I remember my mom just being at close to the finish line, and not expecting it. Being the first male in my family to go to college, passing my CPA, getting my personal training certification. Those are things that I pull out of my mind, when I'm racing, but also day to day when I'm in bed and I don't feel like doing anything, right? There's some days where I'm just like, I'm not feeling it. But, when I'm realizing, okay, I've done this before, I've felt this way before, but I've gotten through it. It helps me realize if it's kind of like a blueprint, right? Like if I can kind of retrace my steps of how I did that before, I can get through this task as well.
I agree. We always have those days where it's like, I do not want to work out today, but I know I need to, or you just down and out and you're like, I remember that time I knew every one of those runs I did contributed to me
mattered.
That marathon, that whatever. I can go up and do something. I can go out and move this body.
Yeah. And I think it's important because we're talking, and we're using it more in the physical realm. But it could be any realm, right? Like if it's spiritual and you finally figuring out who your creator is and how you want to, be in touch with them. And, that's a journey for some people. And getting to that point, you should use it as a cookie jar. You paying off your debt after years, or paying off your student debt, which might also take years. Those could be cookies in the cookie jar. So I think it's also important to look at all the areas of your life, look at all the obstacles, because we're all human, so we've all come through them, and realizing even if it's small, you did that. And I think it's important I think what that does as well is it also allows you to practice gratitude in a moment where you might not realize you're doing it. Of you just saying, wow, I really did that. I'm grateful for it. Let me get through this point right now.
No, that's spot on. Spot on.
Which other ones resonated with you?
So let's talk about number 8. Assess and readjust your schedule and prioritize your goals.
I'm still working on that one.
Yeah. So I will say this. This was my second time reading the book, and that's another one that stuck with me that I continually practice. I've gotten better at it, but
Mhm.
I'm not. This book has fucked me up because, like, I feel like it's not enough. And maybe that's just
Mm.
Goggins in the back of my mind saying, do
Mhm.
more, do more, do more. But it's like I am trying.
Mhm.
But I think this is a very important one to call out because there are a number of studies that really there are a number of like let me say this, there are a number of journalists and people who write about like how much time we have and how we use our time, and we really do have enough time to get everything we do
Mm.
like done.
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
firmly believe that. Now how we use that time is on us and how
Mhm.
we prioritize it. I came across this this meme this week, and it said I make a list of three things, and this is um this three list comes from like a prioritization tool, but it says I write down the things I need to do, I write down the things I want to do, and then I write down the things that other people need me to do.
Mm.
um and the person who made this meme, they were like, I never get to those things that other people need me to do because I'm so focused on what I need to do and what I want to do. But when you think of that, this is a very simplistic way of saying it, but we have to go about our goals like that because we always say, oh, this comes and I have to do this, I have to do that, I have, all these factors come into play, but we really need to prioritize what's best for us. Something that came to mind when I read this was that there are talked about like the barriers to wellness, particularly in African American communities, and they did
Mm.
this study on African American women. They found that for for Black women, they do believe that taking time out of their schedule to walk, run, or exercise takes away from their responsibilities as mothers. I was like, wow, like I never.
Mm.
It's just something that it makes sense, but like to actually like have it documented by so many people that they believe it's challenging to prioritize their health in that aspect because they have to, you know, give time to their children and their families. It talks about it speaks a lot to how we are, really adding ourselves to this community, or are we leaving ourselves out? A recommendation to overcome that is to have, for instance, a partner, someone to support you and
Mm.
hold you accountable, because you may not be able to be your own coach
Mm.
at when you need coaching. So
Mhm.
having other things in place like an accountability partner, so that you can say, "Hey, Joe, let's go run today."
Mhm.
I found it pretty interesting.
Or even, hey Joe, it's time to rest, right? And I think the a big part that I got from this, when I remember reading it, I'm just like, that's true. There's, for me, I'm very goal oriented. I have so many goals that I want to go for, and I do have sometimes issues prioritizing them. So I'll try to tackle all 72 of them, right? But then next week, none of the 72 are done because I only have like 5% done of each thing. So what that also made me realize is that I need to realize, and I he pointed that when only 5% of each thing is done, I'd feel bad, right? And then I fall into this hole of just like, oh, I'm lazy, I didn't do enough, yada yada yada. When in reality, what I did, that was my perception. When in reality, what I did was I was actually working for 10 hours, right? And I had some other goals that I wanted to do, but instead of going for the goals, I made a choice to either sleep or watch TV, right? And at the time, I was like, oh man, I'm being lazy. Or I'm not being, if I got into the Goggins mindset, I'm not doing enough.
Right.
But I think this is where I get into and this is something I appreciated recently, of changing my mindset or of what that looks like. Because I can easily call myself lazy. I can easily call myself not ready for whatever the task is, or I don't want enough. Or I could be saying, I just prioritize my mental health, right? I took time for myself after working 12 hours to do something that I just want. Sometimes I will need to watch a very slow pace show like rap shit or something with no plots, because my brain has been working for 12 hours and I need to not be doing a proposal or journaling for an hour, right? So I think it's also important that I say all that to say I think it's also important while you're using your calendar and your schedule to put in that rest. And then I think the quote of Black women, especially mothers, feeling like worrying about their health or their physical health, sometimes it has that perception of them taking away from my other responsibility. And I think it's important that we start, and that's why we talk about holistic health, of just making sure we're looking at all our goals and all our responsibilities and all our pieces of wellness and saying, rest is just as important, right? My mental health and going to therapy or journaling is just as important. It may feel like I'm being selfish. It may because of perceptions outside of me that I might internalize. But and I always say this, if I'm giving from my cup and not my saucer, then I'm going to get depleted, right? You should always be giving from your saucer and not your cup, right? You don't want to give from the energy you don't have, but you want to give from your surplus. So yeah, that's the first thing that came to mind.
I have recently gotten to the point where I recognize that rest is a part of the cycle. Like I've always thought it's like I work and then rest comes after. No, you may need to prioritize rest. Rest is a part of like the whole. Like it's the final missing piece.
And I blame this is good. I blame this grind hustle mentality. You can sleep when you're dead. No, I hate it. I rebuke it in the name of whoever you believe in. That mindset, I think, has put us back so far because even me, I'm just like, you know what? 4 hours of sleep is not that bad. But bro, I'm not productive the next day, or I feel like crap the next day. And how much am I really getting done? So and we're gonna do an episode of that. It was we'll definitely do an episode on rest and the importance.
That'll be great. Rest is like, I really do think rest is something that like it falls to the wayside, but it's underrated. It's literally resetting. It's preparing to do more. We don't rest.
I swear to you, I did not appreciate it when I was kindergarten and had nap times. Mm-hmm. If I can do a nap time, if jobs had like nap times, and that we didn't.
There are places that do it.
Really?
So this is something for the fans. I worked on cruise ships for a small portion of my
career. Yes. And tell us more.
So essentially on a cruise ship, you're really working every day. But this is also popular in other cultures, particularly like Spanish cultures and like the Dutch in Germany. So pretty much, yeah. So that they needed a siesta. There's literally a day. So on the cruise ships, I'd work till about like 12:30. I'll eat lunch, but from 1 to 3, the entire ship essentially is dead in the sense like there are no meetings, like no one is running around. If you walk, it's like nearly like a ghost town. There are a few people, scrounging around doing small menial things, but it's not like the full pace environment of the cruise ship. But from 1 to 3, people just know like don't plan anything because that's people's rest time, and they respected that on the cruise ship. Do you know how many good naps I got? And I'm already an evening person. I thrive later in the day. So to have that in place and to like say I am doing nothing, even if that nothing is watching a reality television, whatever shows or you do, playing video games, that time is essential.
Yep. A little recharge during the day instead of crashing. And it's funny because I think I remember going to Spain, and I think they literally everything is closed between 1 and 3, which I was gonna say it sounds inconvenient, but that's because I'm from the West, right? And I'm like, we have things to do. Let's go. They're like, we're taking a nap, and I respect that.
Or smoke break. They love to smoke too.
Oh yeah,
they love to crack.
That's a
no shade. No,
this episode.
That's not being. Yeah, that's not.
No, I know that
they downtime.
They do what they do. Okay, so before we wrap up, I want to, because the theme of this season is the we and wellness, I do want to kind of speak a little bit more about this mindset. And I know we did touch on it, of how we can, I want to discuss how we can apply some of this mindset to community and wellness, and how we can start to bring others together in wellness and community. So how do you think some of these can be applied, whether it's some of the challenges or some of the mindsets that he brings What do you think would be helpful? I know that's a pretty broad question, but we could brainstorm together.
Yeah, yeah, we can give it a stab. I'd say what I'd say is that there are levels to how we can achieve optimal wellness.
Hmm.
Um, what I recently got from this book is that there are at the individual level, at the self level, we can definitely define what that optimal health. We can define what it is for us, what it looks for in our lives, catering to what we do. Evan's wellness will not look like Joe's wellness, which will not
Hmm.
look like Richard's wellness, and so on and so forth, so on and so forth. We have to really like get a better understanding of what will make us thrive, since that's definitely come up. But I think on a larger level, when it comes to community, it's important that we really support each other in these individual routes. We need to create
Hmm.
spaces where we are like really generating positive um generating positive messages so that we can continue on this journey, and also like doing things with a community is so much more enjoyable
Hmm.
and easier. We're relying on others. It's just like team sports. You have to rely on others to get to the goal. um I'll briefly bring up how like there are a number of initiatives that happen in this country where government agencies like the CDC give money to smaller organizations to improve the health disparities in their communities. And there was one study in Las Vegas where over, I think it was about 8 years, they were able to reduce the cardiovascular
Mm.
disease factors that contributed to that community. But they did like they first they connected with the stakeholders in the community, find those people in the community who have that voice, who have that demeanor, that power to engage a community, and then they were able to use the resources that they had in place. Even though even though I have my individual goals and I want to make this much and I want to complete this race and be in this mental state, I can't do all of that alone. I have to really rely on others. So I think it's imperative that we have a common mindset in the community, that we know, we're all on this journey together. Although we're walking different pathways, there are a number of different ways you can get to, Germany. You can boat, you can technically swim, you can take an airplane. It's different ways, but that's the same perspective we need in our health journey as well. How can we support each other, but still have this, this vision, this mission, as we move along?
I love that. Just to piggyback, I totally agree. And as much as I was saying, he's very individualistic. He does have a lot of instances where he works in teams, especially during some of his hell weeks. I do remember that. And I think a big piece of it is also being able to be open. I think he does that in this book, very vulnerable and sharing some of his
Uh-huh.
stories. And that gives you, and this is what we talk about in the podcast, it also gives people this vision of like, okay, one, that person's not perfect. And they are here, or they're somewhere I want to be. So there is a roadmap, right? It might not be the one I want to follow, but there is something that shows it is possible. I think two, it also shows that, by sharing these stories, you're kind of empowering them to do something better if that's what they want, right? And I think he did that during Hell Week. Everyone is going through it, but he musters up enough energy to kind of bring everyone along, and share his story and get, he does some crazy things, but they can get through it. I
Yeah,
think
so
one thing. Go ahead. Go ahead.
he completed Hell Week with 30 his yes, he completed Hell Week with
Yes.
30 other men. So it that's not something that, let me say this. I will find that challenging to get through that
It's
alone.
Yeah.
But we all had to work together as, the sergeants, or those, the trainers, really, brutalize them to, get through Hell Week. And even
Hmm.
as he completed one of his ultra marathons, he ran alongside
Yes. I remember.
another, I think she was like a elder Asian lady who
Hmm.
mentored him in his run and even after the run to prepare for his next run. So it's people. We need
Yeah,
people.
we need people. No, and I love the because there's a thought of like, okay, we're too individualistic, but then there's also these pendulum swing of like being too community driven. Like we can't all be on the same journey to the same thing in the same route, because that's literally, we're human. We all have different perspectives. So I think it is important to create that space to show examples and to give people grace and to give people the tools, while also empowering them to go for their individual goals. So if you want to swim, currently I don't know how to for yet, but if you want to swim in this space, just because I can't doesn't mean I can't empower you or encourage you or hold you accountable for you to do that for your journey too. So I think it is about knowing the collective, keeping a broader message, a broader image, a broader mindset, but also letting people, play, explore, figure out what they want to do, figure out these avenues. And then I think together, you guys, everyone just is a community of stronger, mentally, physically, and just a well knit, close community.
And I think a part of that community is kind of like with one of his challenges, lesson 10, use the lessons from previous failures. And I would dare say successes as well, because we all want to get to the mountaintop. We all want to see ourselves in our, our higher being, but it's going to be a struggle. But like, there is somebody who's done it before who can provide me with support to, complete my first 5K in the physical sense. Or I have done it and I can provide that knowledge to someone else. It's a knowledge base. It's a mindset.
I always say, if I can do anything, if I can prevent someone from going through a trial or tribulation I've gone through, I consider that a success, right? I feel like in my circle, if I've gone through it, I want to prevent other people from having to go through it by sharing examples and things of that nature. So I think that's why storytelling is really important.
It is. It is.
All right. So with that, I think that's a good place to end. Is there any? Wait.
That was putting it into.
Oh, you were putting the brakes. That was not the physical brakes. Before we get into the next book, which Evan will announce and we'll close out the show, are there any final thoughts or shady comments before the library is closed?
Ooh, no. My final thoughts on this, I would say David Goggins, Can't Hurt Me, is worth the read, but with a filter. It focuses on your individual. It focuses on the way you, as self, attack your goals, and it does provide a number of nuggets a number of stoic nuggets that allow you to, flush out the bullshit and really focus on what you need, and take it for that. Although this is individual, there are a number of these challenges that also can be applied to the greater mindset, that can support communities to have that can provide them with a more cohesive direction in improving the health and wealth of communities. But realize that it takes time. It's going to take failure, but the journey is worth it, because even though we gave this man some critiques, I think we both fully respect the work that he's done and the stories that he has to share with us.
Black man, right? No, I totally agree. And I think for me, it's just as we're all on this journey of filling up our toolboxes with things that work for us and help us get through and either one survive or one thrive. I think any book that I read that gives tips or self-improvement, or anyone's story that resonates with me, you always take them, try them out, see what works. If it doesn't work, take it away, throw it away. If it works or you need to modify it, keep it until the next time when you need to find something better. So I try not to see books, especially ones I don't like or they rub me the wrong way. I try to always get something out of it, even if it's acknowledging that won't work for me, right? Being able to acknowledge I tried it and it doesn't work is better than saying, I've heard of it and that doesn't work for me.
Yeah. It's not for you.
That's not for me. And that's okay. That's okay. All right. So Evan, please let us know what the next book is that we're going to be reviewing so that the folks can read too.
Will do. The next book we are reading is by Ashanté Reese. She is a doctor of anthropology, and her book is called Black Food Geographies, Race, Self-Reliance, and Food Access in Washington, D.C.
I'm so excited because one, I live here now, and two, well, I feel like we're gonna be talking about food deserts and access, and that always intrigues me.
Yes, my hypothesis is like similar. We're going to talk about racism and food
Of course,
access. We're going to talk
because
about,
racism.
I feel like we're even going to like kind of talk about like what food availability or like resource or act. Yeah, just food.
We're
I
gonna
like
right.
we'll see. We'll see. I'm not going to
We'll see. We'll see.
too
We'll
deep.
all see together. We'll all see together.
That's our job. We're supposed to read the book and then tell people. So
I mean, yeah, we'll figure it out. All right. Thank you so much, Evan, for bringing the book up. Thank you for being here with me, spending some time to go over this book. It's been a pleasure. And until next time, as we say, everyone, thank you for picking you today and have a great one. Bye, y'all.